What does it mean to think? Hello, welcome to AI in slow motion. How lovely that you're taking this moment for yourself. Perhaps you're in the middle of your working day. Perhaps you've consciously stepped away for a little while. A coffee break, a brief moment in which nothing needs to be done. For the next few minutes, you can simply listen. If you like, you can keep your eyes open and watch the visuals. Or you can let your gaze soften. Perhaps you'll close your eyes entirely. Whatever feels right for you right now. You don't need to achieve anything. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to hold on to anything. It's simply enough to be here. As you remain here, you can slowly begin to notice your breath. Perhaps you become aware of breathing in and breathing out again without changing anything. Simply noticing, and as you continue to listen, you may find that your body relaxes just a little. Perhaps your shoulders drop slightly. Perhaps your breathing becomes quieter. Perhaps you don't notice anything in particular. That's perfectly fine. You can take this moment exactly as it is. If you like, imagine that with every breath out, you let go of something, just a little. The last thought, the last conversation, the next task. Not because it needs to disappear, but because it's allowed to wait for a moment. And as a quiet soundscape settles in the background, your attention can slowly open to something that is far older than it might first appear. To a story that began a long time ago and that reaches all the way into this very moment. As you're here and listen, the story of a word, and perhaps also the story of a question that has occupied humans for thousands of years. What does it mean to think? You don't need to answer that question. You can simply carry it with you as you listen. Some things will be clear. Some things will simply drift past. And perhaps at the end, something will remain. A thought, an image, or simply the feeling, I took this moment for myself. When you're ready, let us begin. And if you're not quite there yet, take one more breath and arrive here in your own time. The Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution. We journey on, and as we travel, the landscape changes. The questions remain the same, but the tools which people search for answers become more precise, more formal, more mathematical. We have left the Renaissance behind, but we carry something with us, the idea that artificial intelligence is not merely a dream, but a project that human beings work on with their hands and their tools, with pen and paper, with gear, wheels and symbols. Now we enter a new era, the Enlightenment, and with it the Industrial Revolution. It is a time when belief and reason became worldview, when people were convinced that everything, truly everything, could be understood through thinking, through observation, through method. And if it could be understood, then it could also be rebuilt. That is a bold idea, and it has consequences that reach all the way into our present day. Let us begin with a project that's so vast that it defined an entire era. 1751, Paris. Denis Diderot and Jacques Derrida began to work on the Encyclopédie, the dictionary of science, arts and trades. This was no ordinary reference work. It was an attempt to capture the whole human knowledge, to order it, to give it a form, accessibility to anyone who could read, not only scholars and priests. The method was remarkable. Every subject was broken down into basic components, logically ordered, connected to other subjects through cross-references, from clockmaking to mechanics, from mechanics to physics, physics to mathematics. Imagine that for a moment, a network of knowledge in which every concept is connected to other concepts, in which one can follow a thought and find oneself moving even deeper into a subject that never reaching a wall. That sounds familiar, because that is precisely how the knowledge bases work on which AI systems are trained today. That is how the internet is structured. That is how we think about information when we wish to make it accessible to machines. Diderot did not know that. He could not have known. But he created a method that made knowledge mechanize it. And that was a decisive step. Into the same period falls another development, smaller, less conspicuous at first, but with enormous consequences. Blaise Pascal had already built a mechanical adding machine in 1642. The Pascaline, a device of gear wheels that carried tens automatically, a machine that calculated without a human needing to think. Pascal built it to help his father, who was a tax collector and had to add endless columns of figures. He wanted to lift the burden of mechanical calculation from human shoulders. That is a remarkable motivation, not power, not fame, compassion. And it is a motivation we recognize because it stands behind much of what we try to achieve with AI today. To take the burden of the mechanical form human beings, so that human beings can turn their attention to what machines cannot do. But the greatest leap in this area came later, and it came through two people who are inseparably linked. Charles Babbage and Ada Lovelace. Babbage, born in 1791, was an English mathematician and inventor, someone who could not bear errors, particularly not calculation errors in mathematical tables, compiled by human beings and therefore full of mistakes. He wanted a machine that did not have errors. His first design was a differential engine, a device for computing mathematical tables. But then, in 1837, he designed something far more reaching, the analytical engine, a programmable calculating machine. It was to have a calculating unit, a memory, punch cards for programming. Inspired by Jacques Loom, which had already used the same principles to control weaving patterns. It was to be capable of executing loops, checking conditions, repeating the same step until a goal was reached. These are the basic elements of every modern computer. Babbage never completed the analytical engine. The project was too complex, too costly, too far ahead of his time. But the idea was there, complete, precise, waiting. And then came Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace was born in 1815, was the daughter of the poet Lord Byron. But her world was mathematics. She understood the analytical engine at a depth that surprised even Babbage. In her notes, on a description of a machine, notes that were longer than the text they commented upon, she articulated something fundamental. The machine can work not only with numbers, it can work with anything that can be translated into symbols, with music, with language, with logic. She wrote the first program, instructions for how the machine might calculate Bernoulli numbers, an algorithm on paper for a machine that did not yet exist. And she formulated an observation that is still debated today. The machine, she wrote, can only do what we instruct it to do. Its intelligence is an echo of our instructions. That is the Lovelace paradox. Can something truly think if it only executes what another has thought? It is a question Lovelace posed 1843, and one we have not yet fully answered. At the same time, the Industrial Revolution was changing the way people thought about thinking itself. Julian Offray, a French physician and philosopher of the 18th century, advanced a thesis that shocked his contemporaries. Man is a machine. In his work, L'Homme Machine, published in 1748, he argued that though thought is a physical process, that memories, decisions, feelings, that all of this can be traced back to mechanical reactions, the nerve impulses, to chemical processes, to the firing of signals in a body that functions according to the same laws as any other machine. That was a radical idea, one that dissolved the boundary between human being and mechanism, and it had a consequence that La Mettrie perhaps did not fully foresee. If thinking is mechanical, if it follows the same laws as the striking of a clock or the weaving of cloth, then perhaps it can be rebuilt. Then artificial intelligence would merely be possible. It would be inevitable. And then, at the turn of the 18th into the 19th century, came Jaguar-L'Homme. Joseph-Marie Jaguar, a French weaver and inventor, developed in 1804 a loom controlled by punch cards. Each card encoded a pattern. The machine read the card and wove the pattern automatically, precisely, without human intervention. The principle is the same as the one Babbage adopted for the analytical engine, the same one that sits at the heart of every computer today. Information is encoded. The machine reads the encoding and executes what the encoding prescribes. That is programming in cloth and punch cards in the 19th century. This era gave us something that is difficult to overestimate. It showed that knowledge can be systemized, that calculation can be mechanized, that complex sequences can be translated into symbols and stored in machines. And it left behind a question that goes deeper than any technical detail. La Mettrie asked, if thinking is mechanical, how do we distinguish humans from machine intelligence? Lovelace asked, if a machine only executes what we instruct it to do, can it truly think? Babbage built a machine that was meant to answer and could not complete it, perhaps because the questions were larger than the machine, perhaps because they still are. We journey on. And here we are, at the end of this journey, or perhaps more precisely, at a point from which you can continue in your own time, with your own questions. We have traveled a long way, and all the way here to this moment, you have taken time for a story that most people do not know, for questions that are older than we tend to think, for a term we use every day and whose depth we rarely pause to consider. That was not a small gift. Take one more moment. If your body has relaxed a little during this time, it may now gently let that go. If your thoughts have been traveling, they may now return here into this space, into this day. Breathe in slowly and out again. And if your eyes have been closed, open them now in your own time and let the light back in. Thank you for being here. I wish you a beautiful rest of your day.